Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start the presentations so that we can get you out of here early. Please feel free to get up and get seconds, get dessert, no problem. Steve's coming up.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Thanks for having me again this year. This year you're not going to hear me stand up and present. When Andrea and I were discussing the most relevant content for all of you, I thought, now that WASCO, it's 2 years into WASCO's investment in our fund, we've now made 10 investments out of that fund. I thought it would be really cool to have some of our entrepreneurs come up and speak today. So what we've done is Andrea and I went back and forth and we hand curated 3 of our entrepreneurs to present today and take questions. These are companies that through extension, all of you have invested in. So you're all investors, whether you know it or not, in the 3 companies that are up here today. So there aren't any questions that are off base here. So I would say, we'll have short presentations from each of these entrepreneurs, and we have a good variety of them today. But don't be shy about asking whatever questions you want around the industry, around what they're working on, around the entrepreneurial journey, et cetera. So we have 3 examples of companies that are focused on artificial intelligence. And it's kind of a buzzword. I think everybody's already burned out on hearing about AI. But I think what you'll see today across these 3 different companies are 3 good examples of early stage entrepreneurs who are trying to understand use cases, problems that all of you have in your day-to-day operations, and then apply very practical applications of artificial intelligence to addressing those problems. So again, we're going to have 3 presentations back to back, plenty of time for questions, and please don't be shy. You can put on your best Shark Tank hat if you'd like. Ask whatever questions you want of these folks. They're friendlies. They understand that you are investors in each of their companies, and we hopefully at the end of this, you'll have a little bit more sympathy about the entrepreneurial journey. Some of these folks are earlier than others, as you're about to find out. And I think all very, very intriguing solutions that we've taken time to invest your money within. Bless you. So without further ado, our first entrepreneur is Marty Hu. Marty, come on up from Auto Trainer. There's a brochure or a one-pager in front of all of your spots there that he brought with him today with his contact information and I think a QR code on there as well to the website, but I'm sure he'll talk about that. And with no further ado, so what I've asked him to do is present for about 7 or 8 minutes. We've got 15 minutes each, and there'll be plenty of time at the end for questions, and then I can come out and rove with the mic to make sure that everybody else can hear your questions. So Marty, it's all yours.
Can you hear me from this mic? All right, cool. Guys, thanks for having me here. I'm Marty, and I'm founder and CEO of Auto Trainer, and I'm here to talk to you today about transforming your performance through the voice of the customer. Just a quick background on myself. I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is actually my 3rd company. Sold the first 2 companies. So the first company was an AI company, Predictive Edge, which we sold to Dropbox. The second company, you may have heard of it, Prodigy. It was a leading digital retail platform, and we sold that company to Upstart. It's now Upstart Auto Retail. And through both of these companies, I learned a lot about both AI and then also F&I, and wanted to bring that experience together to help dealers, which is why we built what's now Auto Trainer. And we're fortunate to be with some of the top people in the world across different organizations to have an industry-leading team to build this. So this slide probably doesn't surprise anyone. Consistency and compliance are more important than ever. It is unbelievable what dealers have to go through from a compliance perspective. And just a few examples here, but this is a real problem dealers are facing today. And that problem is compounded by the fact that today, the F&I office essentially lacks accountability. And what do I mean by this? Well, if you ask a dealer today, pretty much outside of the numbers and the paperwork, no one really knows what's going on inside the F&I office. And for example, like, are customers having a good experience? Are they having a bad experience? Is compliance being done properly? Like, no one really knows, and that has, big problems that have ramifications, both obviously in terms of profit, but also in terms of trying to figure what's going on, right? So, training is the obvious solution. And I've shared this Navy SEALs quote that I love. It says, we don't rise to the level of our expectations, we actually fall to the level of our training. And I know that you all know this. And so another thing is, unfortunately, training is a problem, but it's also just a very expensive value proposition. And in talking to a lot of dealers, no one's really happy with their training. If they're doing it well, it's expensive. And not only is it expensive, oftentimes it's something that's done ad hoc, that you have to kind of do, you do a nice training and things look good for a few weeks, and then it's sort of back to business as usual. And so with all of this in mind, we went to create what is AutoTrainer, and I'll just give you a quick high-level view of what AutoTrainer is. It's two solutions with an underlying AI model behind it. So the first piece is a real-time copilot. We put a omnidirectional mic in the F&I office and record conversations and then grade them with AI to have more accountability in the office. After that, there's a role-play coach. The role-play coach allows you to take what you've learned from those conversations and practice them with an AI agent, and the AI agent will simulate a real customer. And it's very real, and I'll actually show you that in a few slides. And then underlying both of them is what we call the voice of the customer, is that we put all of this into analytics to give you recommendations on what we recommend for you to improve your performance. So this is actually a video, so I'm going to just quickly, before we start, it's going to go fast, so I'll just explain. It's kind of hard to see. On the top, there are some check marks. Those check marks describe different pieces of the F&I process. The first one is the F&I manager greeting, and then the right panel is the menu presentation. Have you presented all the parts in the menu? You can play it. As it goes through, we're going to see that there's a speaker, and the speaker is actually cataloging a recording, like a transcript on the bottom. And so we're able to capture that conversation in the office and check how it's going. So if you stop and you want to just pause it, if you want to just pause, maybe pause here. What we've done here is we've graded the conversation now, and we actually have the conversation's been through the AI. You can see which boxes were checked from the real-time checker. And if you want to play it, what we'll see here, if you maybe pause here, thank you, is in this review, there's an AI summary that describes how the conversation went and what could have been improved on from the customer perspective. How well, like on the right, we documented the customer's negotiation style as an assertive buyer. How well did this salesperson pitch to an assertive buyer? Oftentimes what happens is salespeople don't pitch to the customer, they pitch to their same pitch. And we have some grading here. So I think that's the end. That's what we want to show you here. Let me go on to the next slide. Okay, and this is the role play coach. This one's actually a video, and what's going to happen is we'll have one of our team members practicing a conversation around handling the objection of how high quality a vehicle is, and telling you, and we'll see, how the AI responds. So if you want to play it.
This protection is for those rare, unpredictable issues that even high-quality vehicles can face, like unexpected road hazards or wear over time. It's about keeping your investment worry-free, just in case, Michael.
I see your point, but how likely are those issues? I mean, I'm paying a lot for a brand that's known to be dependable already. Why shell out extra money on a gamble?
Coach, how can I react to Michael's
So what he's doing
concern
right now is
about
going into
how
coach mode
likely
to get
issues
help
are
on how to
on
handle this
particular
conversation.
Kia vehicles?
Address Michael's concerns by acknowledging Kia's reputation for reliability, but stress that even well-built vehicles can encounter unexpected issues.
Michael, again, I hear you. Kia is known for its reliability, and that's a great reason to own one. However, even top-rated brands can encounter unexpected issues. Industry data shows that most vehicles require some form of repair over their lifetime, and that increases as mileage and time goes on. This warranty ensures you're protected against surprises.
And I'll just go on and so with all of this information.
So Marty, just to be clear, because people are seeing this for the first time, who was the human, who was the AI there?
Okay, so the human, to go back a slide, the human is the text in the blue. The human is one of our team members. That's Tim, who leads our customer success division, and he's talking to an AI. The AI is the persona on the right. Let's see if I can do the pointer here. Michael. Michael's a young attorney, eloquent and persuasive. He enjoys engaging and loves to challenge the sales process. So we can simulate any number of personas and any number of scenarios. This is a scenario where they're asking for the protection on the Kia. But thank you for clarification. So we're able to take all of this information and build a behavior model where we can tell pretty quickly where a deal went and what actually happened. And in order to do this, otherwise you'd have to watch hundreds of hours of tape. We can find problems instantly, and we do regularly as part of our work with customers. And our customers love us. Here are a few of our top performing customers, and they've been seeing incredible results. In fact, I'm actually going to show you on this slide. So, across our portfolio, we've seen that PVR number is actually an average. Some customers have seen PVR increases as high as $1,000, and we're seeing improvements in PPD, compliance adherence, as well as training time. So to learn more, I've shared my contact information here, and there also should be a brochure in your table. Thank you.
Thanks. Quick question.
Yeah.
One of the slides that you had up there showed a delta of the gross per vehicle between the public companies and the private companies, $650.
Yes.
Go back to one of the early slides.
It's one of the, yes.
What do you attribute that to? I mean, you're in the training business. There it is right here. So how do you explain that?
Yeah, the publics are very, very deliberate about how their process is, and they do a ton of training on the process. Like one of the and in fact, some of the highest performing publics actually use a process like the one that we've created. So for example, Van Tile Group, their PVRs have been higher than anyone I've ever seen. They actually put video cameras in every F&I office and graded those conversations with paper, actually. So we see that a lot of this comes from training consistency. Does that answer your question? Cool. Okay.
Other questions? Other questions? Don't be shy. So Marty, you're pretty early stage here. What's been the hardest thing? Well, how long ago did you start the business? And what's been the hardest thing that you've experienced so far?
Yeah, so we started the business about 2 years ago. And we really went to market for the first time around NADA of this year. I would say the hardest thing about this business is I think a lot of people are burned out about the idea of recording because there was this motion of doing video recording in the past that didn't really work. I think that the video recording didn't really work in large part because people would have to watch hundreds of hours of tape in order to understand what the videos were telling them to do. and no one was willing to do that. And so oftentimes we have to overcome that sort of gut reaction of like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to record, and they have to understand that it's different because of what the AI does for them now.
Do you have to get the customer's approval to record while they're in the room?
Great question. So in one-party consent states, we don't have to. That's 33 states.
How many?
but
30?
It's 33 states are one-party consent. In Jersey I think it's actually a one-party consent, but I assume a number of you have dealers that are in two-party consent states. So in a two-party consent state, we actually ask for the customer's consent in a survey we give them when they're in the F&I wait area. And we found that when they're in the F&I wait area, the customer's kind of bored out of their mind, and they tend to complete that survey and give consent about 95% of the time. So it hasn't really been an issue for us. But great question, thank you.
Other questions? What percentage of F&I managers don't like this product?
Well, initially, I would say if you're a high-performing F&I manager, you usually don't like the product. The low performers love it, and the middle performers are sort of like, I'm not sure. But the general managers make them use it, and within a few weeks, everyone starts to see their numbers improve, and they all start to like it.
What's your vision for this company in 5 years? What will it become?
So I sort of snuck it in here that I mentioned a few pieces of voice of the customer. We're sort of beginning to understand that being able to capture a customer's voice in all of these conversations can lead to some incredibly valuable insights that we can share with our dealers to help them understand who their customers are and what are their customers truly saying, and how well are we doing on things like customer success or, truly customer satisfaction. So we want to be able to develop that data into something that's a lot more rich and valuable, and we're sort of at the beginning of being able to do that.
Any other questions before we let Marty go? Okay, you've got the flyer there. You can scan the
we got
QR
one
code.
more.
Oh, we got one more? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
When you were using AI as a resource, was that you recording conversations, or was that from a chat dialogue? I wasn't sure.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That is, we're recording a conversation. That was a live conversation that was happening in the F&I office that was being recorded. I just had it in chat because I wanted to voice over it and just tell you what was happening, and I thought it would be distracting to have two voices at once. But we. They were chatting to AI as they were having. No, they were actually talking to the AI. It's being transcribed, and then the AI is talking back to them.
Yeah, so just reiterate the omnidirectional mic, how you would set this up in an F&I office. Maybe that'll make it clearer for folks.
Yeah, so what we do is we put an omnidirectional mic in the F&I office, and then that omnidirectional mic, along with our software, can pick up the different speakers, and it logs them in. That's why you saw different colors of the speakers. It logs those speakers together, and we can tell what the conversation is, what conversation is being had.
Sorry, one more.
Love it, thank you.
So when he was asking for training from AI, how did that happen? Was he typing that in?
He pressed this. Thank you. He pressed this button called Coach Mode, and so he was practicing with the AI. Yeah, that's great. Let's go back to that slide. It's somewhere in the middle here. See that button up here? Here we go. This button here, Coach Mode. He said he was practicing the scenario, and he said, "Hey, I'm kind of stuck here. I want the coach to help me out." So he hit that Coach Mode button, and the conversation shifted into one where he's now talking to a coach. And then when he ended Coach Mode, he went back to the customer and resumed the conversation where he left off. So the AI actually trained this user. This has actually been one of our top features that our customers who use this every day use as a way of learning how to overcome certain objections.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Any last?
I guess the only thing I would say finally is that, like, as a token of gratitude for having us here, as our trainer, we're actually offering a discount to all of our anyone who comes in through this event. So when you reach out to me or our sales team, just mention WASCO. The price of the product is normally $14.95 a month, but for if you come through the program, it's going to be $9.99 a month. So
Great. Thanks. Round of applause for Marty. Nice work. That was great. Thank you. MK. So next we have McKenna Valley. It's come in from Denver. Coming from Denver. The company's name is Spark. It's all yours.
Awesome.
The clicker's up there.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, as Steve mentioned, my name is McKenna Valley. I'm the CEO and founder of SparkServe. Born and raised in Michigan, but I've spent my entire career in software, mostly in sales and operations. And as someone whose father works for a dealership, I've always been fascinated by the concept of scaling revenue, scaling profits with such a slim profit margin on the new business side of things. So I decided to take a look into fixed operations and actually went to a dealership and shadowed it and tried to find the certain failure points that make it difficult to scale this profit center for dealers. So what we found were a number of things. So first and foremost, it's an incredibly disparate and siloed tech stack. The average BDC agent in your service call center is using 10 to 12 logins per day, and that's across things like manufacturer databases to check for recalls, CRM to find the customer data and actually reach out to them, multiple different schedulers as mandated by different OEMs, and then logging their calls superfluously even though their activity's already been recorded in 2 to 3 plus software platforms. Meanwhile, these are usually some of the lowest investment employees at your organization. For many of them, they're single moms, no formal education, no college degree, and it's oftentimes their first job in automotive or potentially even their first job in customer service. This leads to incredibly high turnover, and what we've seen at all of the dealerships we've spoken to is that the tenure's around a year and a half. So someone with no education, no knowledge comes in, gets onboarded. If they are successful, they will stay that year and a half, and if they're not, they might attrit within a couple of months, and you're stuck searching for another person to fill their shoes, which leads to huge variance in rep productivity, meaning that your top 1 to 2 agents are probably 2 to 3 times as productive as the rest of the pack. This leads to, obviously, poor customer experiences, and this is why many dealers stick to servicing hand raisers instead of trying to scale this department and turn the demand generation spigot on for your fixed operations revenue stream. The market obviously reflects this. I think we are all aware that we're getting cannibalized left, right, and center by quick lube stations. Dealers today only own about 30% of the market share. Meanwhile, the average American's getting serviced more frequently and at a significantly higher dollar value than ever before. And with millennials and Gen Zs flooding the market, they are used to an instant gratification cycle that has been led by companies like Instagram or TikTok. They're used to basically needing an appointment, showing up, getting serviced, and leaving. And that's simply not the reality that we're showing them. So my co-founder and I have devised a solution to win back market share for dealers by creating positive customer interactions, whether it's a rep's first day on the job or 1,000th day on a job. And we do this by consolidating the software partners that you see below and serving up back office automation and leveraging AI instead of putting it in the hands of customers, which by a show of hands, how many of you, if you call in somewhere and a robot answers the phone, do you immediately smash the 0 button? Anyone? Couple honest folks back here. As for me, absolutely do that. But what we're doing is serving up a comprehensive customer history. So at the moment someone calls in or the moment they're calling out, it's pulling up a comprehensive customer history and consolidating schedulers so that they only need to learn one platform, not the DMS, the CRM, 3 to 4 appointment schedulers, and their appointment tracking tool. We're also ensuring productive conversations by leveraging compelling events in the customer journey to create a why now moment for the customer. We're generating smart task lists with campaigns for example, recalls or manufacturer promotions and automatically adding the right op code so you're not missing out $1 in reimbursement from the OEM. We're gamifying it to increase productivity, and after failed calls, an AI-powered coaching tool will actually give them actionable feedback so that on their next interaction they can be that much better. And lastly, we're purpose building for the BDC and allowing a manager to scale across not just maybe 10 employees, like Marty mentioned. A big barrier to using recordings is the ability to act on it. With Spark, we're giving down to the hour productivity data to your managers so that they can scale themselves across, 10, 25, 50 reps without needing, 2, 5, 10 managers and just wasting effort. So we actually launched this with a Midwest dealer, and they have about 14 service centers across Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. And what we were able to do was first save them $60,000 in superfluous software costs. We've automated all of the activity tracking, so there's no juking the stats, there's no stealing appointments or creating activities that didn't exist. It's all being logged automatically, and they cut immediately about $60,000 out of their tech stack. We also boosted their appointment volume because we've been able to cut the time it takes to actually dial, service, book the appointment, and move on to the next customer for them from about 6 minutes to about 3 minutes. So we're boosting their appointment volume by about $660,000 in additional ROs per year. And that's service gross based on an RO value of $180 per RO, which is pretty slim. We boosted productivity per rep, so they're bringing in an additional about $74,000 in service RO gross per year. And most importantly, we cut attrition for them. They were losing about 2.5 reps a month to voluntary attrition, and with Spark, they're losing about a half rep a month. And of the new reps that they've onboarded about 3 weeks quicker, and during that onboarding period, each of them has booked about 105 additional appointments during that 10-week onboarding that is now 7 weeks. So you might be sat there thinking, good for them, not for me, we're already pretty good. I actually took the liberty of mystery shopping a lot of your stores. So if you go ahead and read this list, you might see some of your stores represented. You might see some of your buddies from your 20 group stores. They're all Automotive Ventures affiliates or WASCO affiliates, so I hope this is a safe space to share the feedback. But I wanted to share some of this data with you so we can see how we're actually performing on this front and if we're meeting the market where it is. So I would say shout it out. Andrea, how many times do you think that out of these 27 stores I was able to reach a representative? 5. Well, you guys have actually gone way beyond that. But in 22 cases, I was actually able to speak with someone. So I measured, did they confirm my contact details? And that means asking my name, phone number, and email for follow-up, because there's no reason for me to call in, need an appointment, and not get retargeted later down the line. I am now in your customer base, and I should be being marketed to. In that case, only 9 of 22 actually confirmed all of my contact details. In each case, I said, I have a 2017 insert SUV here of the manufacturer that I was calling for. And I said I needed my brake pads replaced. I asked the same 2 questions of everyone. 1, how long is this going to take me? When am I going to get my car back? And 2, how much is this going to cost me? In only 7 of those cases was I able to get an answer. Of the other 15, they usually referred me to a service advisor to answer those questions on duration and cost. And you can imagine how many callbacks of those I received. 3. Now, overcoming an objection, when I asked them how much it cost, if they were able to tell me price, I would say, basically, and just let the dead air hang, that sounds expensive, and see what they filled it in with. If they weren't able to give me price, I asked the question, well, how should I know if I can afford this? And again, let the dead air hang. In only 5 of these cases were they able to come back to me with any sort of objection handling, any sort of rebuttal, telling me that either they're utilizing Sunbit for payment plans in case I can't afford it, or the difference between getting work done by a certified technician versus going to the local Quick Lube or to my buddy Jim down the street. In 3 of the cases, they required me to have my VIN to schedule. Me personally, I don't know that off the top of my head, and most of these people would probably need to go down to their garage on a good day or into a parking garage or down the street on a bad day in a major metropolitan area. I was able to set an appointment at 17 of the 22. Most of that is led by availability constraints or constraints where they needed my address in order to schedule a service appointment for a brake pad replacement. Of the 17 that I scheduled, 11 sent an appointment confirmation, which is actually pretty good compared to some of the other dealer groups that I mystery shop. And 3 of the 17 did all of the above. However, 11 of the 22 live on a call with me, my real name, real phone number, real email, everything, complained about a scheduling issue or a service, like a scheduling software related issue. And that sounds like, oh, my system's lagging. I'm sorry, my system's down. Let me just reload my software quickly. Oh, I can't find you. Things like that, where it's clear that, they don't have the right tools to succeed. And we can't continue to expect to win the market back from quick lube stations without it. So as compared to Spark dealers, I won't harp on all of these results, but the Spark stores are completing these calls roughly 50% faster. They're obviously no one's perfect, right? We can only control what we can control, but giving them the right tools to be able to move customer loyalty in the right direction, move customer satisfaction in the right direction. These are all things that we can control, and this is what Spark is here to help serve. So I'll wrap that up. Does anyone have any questions? Also, if you're curious about how your stores performed, shoot Steve an email, shoot myself an email. I'm happy to share the full results with you guys in a non-anonymized fashion.
CDK, Reynolds and Reynolds.
Data on our ROI or data in general?
No, I mean the customer data.
Oh, the customer data, it's coming from CDK, Cox, Techion, MyKarma.
You're missing one.
Dealer Logics. We don't work with Reynolds yet, but it's on the horizon. So I'll leave that there.
Other questions? So MK, you're still pretty early in your journey. What does your product roadmap, if you look out like 18 months, what does it look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I spoke earlier about kind of moving the burden of AI into the back office to free up the customer to have this kind of instant gratification loop. We see first automating the back office workflow, which is where we are today. In the next 12 months, we want to automate any non-revenue tasks. So that's things like CSI calls, confirmation calls, automatically checking whether you have the parts available or automatically pulling the parts or ordering them through something like Automate or something like that, so that when someone pulls into the service drive, you have the parts available and in stock ready to be serviced. And then in 18 months, hopefully AI will have come along in a way that we can seamlessly integrate AI-powered reps to be indistinguishable from a human experience. So there's no more frustration when you call and a robot picks up.
So if I had to mirror back what you just said, phase one is just a widget that complements the humans that are working today. Phase two is replacing the humans?
Yes, yes.
Over what time frame?
Probably 24 months. Good. I mean, it depends on how how well OpenAI continues to innovate.
Great.
Yeah.
Other questions for MK? What's the biggest dealer objection that you get today when you're trying to sell to dealers?
I think priority and changing expectations. There's so much focus on service advisors and service techs, getting the right people with the right skills and the right certifications in your service bays and retaining them. But I think the biggest objection is, like, this is a low investment department, and yet it is the demand generator that drives all of your appointments. It's about time to invest in it because this is where huge profit margins can be gained by incremental increases in productivity.
Other questions?
So
repeat the question?
How much is this? So our list pricing is $900 per rooftop per month, but for all WASCO affiliates, it will be $700 per rooftop per month as a discount. But usually it pays for itself within about 2 to 3 ROs per month, and we're doing roughly 20x that for most of our customers.
Just quick question. I know asking for a VIN for somebody who hasn't been to the store is frowned upon, but with the unbelievable amount of recalls that are on cars nowadays, how does your system, if you're not, if a customer's never been at the store before and, they're not providing a VIN, we obviously want to set that expectation for when they come in for brakes, that they don't show up and go, okay, well, you have 6 recalls as well. So how does your software handle that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that we do is we'll automatically parse through the database of all of your customers, all known VINs, make, model, year. And when we find a recall that is open and resolvable on a certain vehicle, we'll actually go through and tag any other vehicle that we know the VIN, know the make, model, year, where that has that's still open, and then set up outbound tasks to be able to call on these people and say, hey, we have the parts available, we can do this work, and for you guys, you can get reimbursed. Now, if someone calls in with the same make, model, year that we already know has an open recall on it, we would be able to flag that when they add their vehicle and say, hey, we don't know if this has already been resolved on your vehicle, but there's a pretty good chance, and prepare them already with the duration, the type of recall, if it's a reprogram versus a new part, how much it's how long it's going to take, these types of things. There's a lot of smart matching that can be done without a VIN.
Other questions? So how long have you been at this now?
We went to market in February.
And then if you look forward 5, 10 years, whatever it is, what will define success for you as an entrepreneur?
I think increasing that 30%. There's no reason for you guys to invest your entire Salesforce Rolodex into your customer base and then lose them the second they walk out the door. I'll consider this a success if we're able to see 60, 70% of the market share owned by dealers in the future.
A round of applause for MK, please. Nicely done. Jim? So next up, a man you may recognize from automotive news, et cetera. Jim's been at this a little longer, and that's not ageism, Jim. I think you and I are in the same boat here, but Jim and I have been on this journey for a little bit longer together. For about 4 years now, we made an investment in this company, and he's seen stellar growth, some of which, if he doesn't present in his presentation, we'll talk about today, because he's raised a number of rounds of financing, and the company's performed very, very well. But I'm super excited to bring Jim to stage today. Same thing, don't hold back on questions. Whereas Marty and MK's companies are very early, Jim's now a few more years down the track and probably a couple more years closer to an ultimate exit that we'll talk about as well today. So Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. We're going to talk about warranty claims processing, which in some sects is not the most scintillating subject, but I'm going to try and make it very scintillating for you. But let's start at the place where it's always best to start, which is at the beginning. The objective of all of us is profitable growth. There is no other objective, really. That's the primary objective. Everything we do every day is in service of that objective. But that's getting harder. Our friends at the Presidio recently published some new stats, and we can see where things are going on the variable side of the house. In my experience, I've been working with all of you for about 30 years, mostly on fixed operations. The business is somewhat of a pendulum that swings back and forth between sales and service. And what we're seeing now is inevitable after the pandemic, with margin compression reasserting itself. Vehicle gross is down, F&I about the same, overall profitability down a little bit more than 20%. Plus, we've got a tightening regulatory environment, inflation still creeping up, consumer sentiment down. This is all, again, thanks to our friends at the Presidio Group, which brings us back to, not surprisingly, service. Service historically drives more than 50% of total dealership gross. Service is broken down primarily into 2 revenue streams: customer pay, CP, and warranty. And the trends around those are really interesting. If you look at customer pay, these figures from NADA, what we see is CP growth decelerating. It has already returned to pre-COVID norms, and I think that it's going to continue to drop as we see EVs become a larger and larger percentage of the overall car park. Contrast that with warranty trends, and it's really, really interesting. These trends, if you look at the run-up to the pandemic, warranty grew over 38%, average of about 7.7% per year. We are projecting another almost 20% growth between now and the end of 26, driven by two things. One, really obvious, one, maybe not so obvious. The obvious one is we're going to sell millions more vehicles in the coming years, which means millions more warranty-covered vehicles on the road. The not obvious one is J.D. Power has been tracking the warranty costs on EVs for a number of years, and we can see here what they have found is they run about 300% higher than an internal combustion engine. Now, I don't think anybody in here knows exactly how many more EVs we're going to sell, but we'd all probably agree it's going to be more. With about 150 new EVs coming to market, these two factors are combined are going to drive warranty revenue up for the dealer significantly in the coming years, which is a good guy. Challenge is in the cost of warranty processing, which impacts your gross. We've been doing warranty processing essentially the same for about 80 years. If you take a look, the processing cost consumes, depending on the brand, 14 to 16% of the gross from the work. Each claim takes up to 22 minutes. There's no automation. It's a lot of paper pushing, a lot of looking up codes. And the number of claim administrators are on the decline. More about that here in a second. What we've seen since we began tracking this is the number of administrators are steadily declining, and it's actually accelerating. They are either retiring or they're leaving automotive. And what that does is that creates a really interesting situation because the demand for warranty claims processing is going to go up while the human beings that have historically done it are on the decline. Obviously, it creates a scalability problem. And by the way, I didn't make this up. You told me. I've talked to you in the form of market research in 2020 and then again late last year, released in January of 2024. What you have said is, yes, warranty claims are going to rise. Processing costs are up significantly. The time to process a claim has almost doubled. And yes, that does consume a lot of the gross profit. So these are just some of the reasons that we created WarCloud. WarCloud is the industry's first and only AI platform that automates warranty claims processing. This is not a tool that the dealer uses to process the claims. We take it over on your behalf. With some pretty interesting improvements, we see additional revenue, about $142,000 a year. We reduce the cost of claims processing by more than 50%. Claims get processed within 24 hours. And although everybody's a little bit different, all of the OEMs track how quickly did you submit the RO, what was your first-time success rate. We improve all of those metrics that the OEM tracks. How did this happen? Well, I think everybody knows vehicles are just getting a lot more complicated, a lot more computational power, a lot more sensors, a lot more software. And what this has resulted in is an increasingly complex warranty labor time guide and process. Just looking at, I think this slide is for Ford, we've had 1,300 recalls over the last little while, 400 in the last 10 years, and the body hinge trim variants is approaching 10,000. It's not like the old days where one human being sitting there could memorize a code and then it applied across everything. Now it is horrendously complex. So what WarCloud does is it already knows all of the codes. It knows all of the variations. It uses AI, a form of AI, natural language processing, imports the repair order, scans everything, makes sure that you're getting every tenth, every allowance, and then submits it to the factory so you get paid. One just kind of interesting example, although Takata airbags are mostly in the past, a Takata airbag claim, in addition to what it paid, you could get a $20 administrative allowance. There are add times based on the models, and as well as add times based on the trim. If you didn't know that, you didn't get it. The money was lost. And that's the really interesting about this, of the many interesting things. There is, you don't understand the opportunity cost because you don't see it. You see what's coming in, but you don't see what's been lost. Now, I did say that this is an outsource. We take it over, but it's not set and forget. We've developed an app called Chirp, And what Chirp is it sits on your desktop or it sits on your phone, and it's essentially the dealer's window into everything that we're doing. You can communicate with people on our side, two-way communications. You can look up any claim. You can check your schedule. You can check aging. There are dashboards and metrics so that you can see every aspect of what's happening with your warranty processing. The end result is additional hours. The typical dealership will see about 103 more hours per month, which obviously is more revenue. That's more profit. That's better CSI because you're no longer chasing all of the scraps of paper necessary to process warranty. You're more focused on the guest experience. And in some cases, you can improve tech satisfaction. We know that technicians traditionally aren't very happy about warranty because they feel that they lose hours on it. This is a counterbalance to that. Happy technician. So again, just to recap the results, increase warranty revenue on average by over 12%, which is about $142,000 a year. Reduce the cost of claims processing by more than 50%. Claims are processed within 24 hours, improving cash flow, and we improve the OEM metrics. And there's a misspelling. It's supposed to be 4 questions, not faux questions.
Faux questions. Any faux questions?
Sorry I went real fast, but we're under a time constraint, but happy to answer questions.
That was great, very clear. Questions for Jim? Come on, you guys have some questions here. So Jim, how many years have you been at this?
So we came to market in 2021, really not knowing. So I founded WarCloud in 2014. I've been, as I mentioned, working with you for over 30 years. Before WarCloud, X-Time. Before that, I founded something called AutoPoint and a few other things prior to that, mostly always fixed operations. So we founded WarCloud in 2014 thinking it would take us a year to build. It took us 7 years to build. It is deceptively easy to describe. It is horrendously difficult to stand up a technology solution, but we have, which is probably why we're the category creator. There is no one else in the space doing what we're doing.
Great. Questions? Yes, Jim.
Thanks. I guess a question and a follow-up. Obviously, the warranty reimbursement environment is different in most of the states. I mean, there are many. So I'm assuming your technology takes into consideration state laws and how those state laws enable dealers to be compensated. So that's part of this process.
Yes.
Yeah. Then the follow-up question is, how's it going in New York? Because New York just had a recent change in their law for labor times. New Jersey is fixing to do similar, and wondering how the implementation and rollout is going there.
Sure.
And do you have any tips for us on what to do, what not to do?
I don't have any tips. The changes in New York are following the changes made, for example, in Illinois and others, and we're already in those states. So we've already ran that game plan. We'll continue to run it. I think everybody knows. Let's just say that the manufacturers are not delighted with the state laws in some of those cases, but our AI essentially it just is applying the rules. You know, I've explained to more than one of the manufacturers. If you think about, sorry, this is going to be a longer answer. If you think about the OEMs and what they have built on their side in terms of warranty processing, it's really to do 3 things. The last 2 are related. The first, and by far the most important, is they want that warranty data as absolutely quickly as possible so they can analyze it and they ripple it through the supply chain looking to get ahead of quality problems. That's reason number 1. Reasons number 2 and 3 are to prevent fraud and error. Those are the 3 reasons they do that. Well, we check all 3 of those boxes. All we're doing is applying the labor time guides, which are the manufacturer rules. And as I've explained to them, look, yes, we're getting 12% more revenue 100% legitimately. We're applying your rules. If you don't like the rules, okay, then change the rules. But don't get mad at me because we're going out and we're getting every tenth that a dealer is legitimately entitled to.
So we've heard from some dealers in New Jersey that they're not currently using. We've heard from some dealers in New Jersey that they're not currently using a third-party labor time guide. Mm-hmm. Pretty much just they multiply the factory guide for their customer work. Have you integrated all of the third-party labor guides into your system so the dealer could just drop down box, select which labor guide they're using?
So again, WarCloud is not a tool that the dealer uses. We grab the RO and we do the processing based on whatever the guide the dealer has given us. So if they're using, there's a whole bunch of them out there.
All data?
All data, or if they say, in some cases, in Illinois in particular, it's multiply it by X. That's up to you. Thank you. Appreciate the question.
Quick question. So you're talking about a 17% increase in overall warranty.
12.4.
I'm sorry, say again?
12.4%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we all know that our warranties include, when you sell a new car, include first oil change, maybe sometimes second, sometimes third. Plus we sell aftermarket maintenance programs. Mm-hmm. So the first two categories are reimbursed through warranty. How does that affect that 12%? Is that included in that or not? Because obviously we're selling more vehicles, newer vehicles in the past year or so, and that should have an effect on it. Am I saying the question right?
If you mean, so some maintenance is bundled as
Correct.
Warranty and it's
Yes.
submitted.
Yes.
Yeah, it would, because I'm speaking about overall warranty. We're not parsing apart any of that. However, extended warranty isn't included in that. It's only OEM basic warranty. Yeah.
Do you do anything with compliance checks as far as CCCs on ROs, mileage, signatures? Like, are you actually checking the RO for compliance? And then how do you handle audit situations with the manufacturer?
Sure, thank you. So we do as much compliance as can be done when you're not at the dealership. So our philosophy is that signatures are something that on-site management should be looking at, whether it's a manager's signature or the customer's signature, but everything else we do. And Chirp, which I mentioned is the window into what WarCloud is doing, has a whole series of metrics and dashboards around compliance. We'll also occasionally, if we see a systemic problem, we'll hold a webinar with the people at the shop and take them through, how do you write a proper text story, as one example, or using shop time properly. If there is an audit and we see a decrease in the frequency of audits in our customers overall, but if there is one, and there have been a handful, we support the dealership and we have a guarantee if there is any chargeback based on our workmanship, we'll make that good.
Any last questions for Jim? Oh, we got one over here. Our next presenter.
I was going to start now. Jimmy, so assuming that vehicles, and they are getting more complex, and the franchise base has the inside track on warranty work, have you seen anything in that translating to stickiness in terms of when those vehicles become customer pay? So the experience and education on working on more complicated and complex vehicles in the warranty period, right? So the customer is going to come to the franchise dealer for the warranty work, but then they leave after. Are you seeing any translation of that stickiness that says, because we have this experience that an independent might not have, because we did work on this vehicle from its inception through the end of its life, do you have any data on that?
I do. Well, I mean, industry data. So in some brands' cases, warranties and coverage are getting lengthier or broader. In those cases, they're stickier because there's another reason to come back to the dealership. Also, recalls, which 100% are covered under warranty, is a really great opportunity to try and to retain or reclaim a customer because they can only come to you, and recalls are free. So it's a great upsell opportunity, and it's a great way to wow them with the customer experience. Unfortunately, the data, and probably the most comprehensive data for this is from Cox Automotive. We saw that the percent of total service visits in the United States coming to dealers dropped from 33% to 30% over the last 3 years. So again, that's overall service visits, but I think that still shows as a defection problem.
Any last questions for Jim? Going once, going twice. Round of applause, please, for Jim. Thank you. So next we're going to have Kevin up, but I guess just to debrief quickly here. So You're investors in all three of those companies. To give you context, we see about 60 companies a month. So it's very rare that you can stump the chump by reaching out to me and asking, you've seen this new vendor, have we seen them before? Because typically we've already had conversations with them. So if I can offer anything to you, if you come across a new vendor, you'd like to kind of bounce it off of us, ask what other dealers are seeing, what we think in terms of the competitive landscape, I will offer me up. We'll make sure that you get my phone number and my email address, but don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to be a thought partner as you're evaluating new technologies. And very self-servingly, that's how I get my best lead flow, because if you ever come across an entrepreneur and you're like, this thing looks really awesome, this is how we find our best quality deal. So thanks for your time today. Our entrepreneurs will be here afterwards if you'd like to chat with them at all. And with that, we'll have Kevin come on up. Right there.
There we go. I'm mic'd up. Hello, everybody. So I like this November because I can do a 2025 outlook here. So I put together like my favorite 10 pictures to talk about what you can expect or what I think is going to be the key dynamics of 2025. I will say it segues nicely because part of the presentation, Jim talked about it a little bit, is as things cycle, and I never use the word normal in the auto industry, but as new vehicle gross declines, I think you as dealers will be and should be looking for, you have that revenue and gross margin diversity to find the other things. I think fixed ops is the place. I think, as crazy as this sounds, I think the used vehicle market will cycle back in. I don't know if I get that deep into it in this presentation, but if just a bit of side analysis I did, if you look at gross for, I know they're bad words, Carvana and CarMax, their gross on used is way better than the publicly traded franchise base. And as we say at the Presidio Group, is your margin advantage is my opportunity. And I think you're going to start to see the franchise base look at what those companies are doing on the pre-owned side and assume that there's margin to be had there. And there was that distraction from unprecedented gross margin in the new vehicle space through the pandemic because of the supply-demand balance. That's now pretty much over. So with that said, Presidio Group, you know who that is. So here's my new favorite picture. This is new vehicle inventory going back to pre-pandemic 2019. That's the black line. The blue line is demand, unit sales not seasonally adjusted. And you can see that demand, regardless of supply, stays in that 1 to 1.5 million units per month range. Whether we have 4 million units of inventory or whether we have 900,000 units of inventory, this line has been consistent all the way. And you can see where we are now. We're back to 3.1 million units. So if you just do that as a ratio, right, back here we could be 4x. Here we were 1 to 1. We were actually below 1 to 1. And here we're getting back to roughly 3 times. And Jim mentioned it. It's all about profitable growth. So you can drive volume back to 17. It won't happen. 17, 18 million, but it can't happen profitably. And I think what you're going to see in 2025 from your OE partners is there's a little bit of a reckoning coming in terms of capacity in North America and even globally. So there's going to be some pain for the manufacturers. I'll talk about it. So this is the first thing, supply and demand getting out of balance again, which kills profitability, right? Not every sale is a good sale. So here's production and capacity in North America. And the thing about that inventory build is it's not because the manufacturers see a demand opportunity or volume opportunity. It's because they have to utilize their capacity and cover their fixed costs. So if you look here at some of the forecasts, some of my friends in the UK forecast global and production capacity, right? We're going to build capacity out through 2028 in the US. This is like, or in North America. So it's like 25 million units, right? We're struggling to get above 16 million in the US. Canada and Mexico might account for another 3 combined, but we're going to have 25 million units of capacity here. It's not going to work. If you look at production, right, we've kind of leveled off here and haven't gotten back to the pre-pandemic levels. Overcapacity issue, very expensive, not good from a manufacturer perspective. And if you can't sell more units with your capacity, you have to attack the cost side, right? Now you have to take costs out, and nobody ever wants to do that, right? Structural costs, once you take them out, you can't put them back easily, right? So, but that's where we are. So here's the scariest slide. This is capacity utilization in the US. You figure 80% is where you want to be, 80 to 85%. We've been below 75% in below 80 in 28 consecutive quarters, below 75% in 19 out of 20 quarters, and the third quarter was 68%. So we're not even close, which is actually the second worst stretch. The data goes back to 1972. This is the second worst stretch of capacity utilization in 50 plus years, and the worst one was this, 34 quarters in a row, and we all know how that turned out, right? That's 2005 to, I think it went into 13, and that ended with bankruptcies. I'm not saying we're going to end up in bankruptcies again here, but this is not sustainable going forward for the manufacturers, right? So what I'm saying is we're building capacity, we're not utilizing it, and inventory is high, right? We can't drive the volume to utilize the capacity. Something has to give, probably on the cost side. So here's the other thing, truck car mix. This is my all-time favorite slide. So truck mix versus car mix, we're 81% in the US, 81-19. And the last time this was 50-50 was 2013 in there. This has been the I shouldn't say single most, this has been the earnings driver for manufacturers for the past 10, 11 years. It's not electric vehicles, it's not even more volume, because this continued to increase as we went through the pandemic, right? Volume dropped to 13 million, 14 million, but that mix shift kept going, right? So every time you trade a unprofitable car sale for a profitable truck sale, the volume doesn't matter, right? It's doing more with less. Problem is, we actually hit 80% in the US in 2021. Here we are 3 years later at 81%. So there's a lot of manufacturers, well, all the domestic manufacturers are kind of at the end of this truck mix shift runway, which is everybody's up in the 90%, right? Ford, there's one car left, Mustang, right? General Motors, there may be 2 Cadillacs, a Malibu, and Corvette left, that's it. Stellantis brands, there's nothing left, right, until the electric Charger comes out. So there's nowhere left to go for a lot of these manufacturers. Some of the Asia-based and the European-based still have some room to go. But if this has been the earnings driver for the past 11, since 2013, where do we go now, right? So just back on that point, so this idea of excess capacity and profitable growth, just looking at GM and Ford, right? So 2023 earnings are the top lines in blue, and the darker lines are 2016. So let me just explain the gap between those two lines. 2023 earnings were much larger for each manufacturer. 22 percentage points of truck mix to General Motors to 92. So from 2016 to 2023, they went from 72% truck to 92% truck and increased their profit per vehicle by, let's call it, $700 per vehicle. They sold 4 million fewer vehicles globally, right? So think about that. By selling fewer vehicles, but your mix shift to truck is what has driven your profitability. Now where do we go? Same thing with Ford. 23 percentage points of truck mix to 97%, but globally they're selling 2.2 million vehicles fewer. So the point is, if we're doing more with less, more revenue and profit contribution with fewer units, why do we need 25 million units of capacity, right? The average transaction price is up near $49,000. Basic business economics, higher the price, the less the demand, right? The less the volume. So So 2025, we're starting to see it a little bit. Nissan, BMW, Volkswagen started to talk about headcount reductions, capacity reductions globally. I think we're going to hear a lot more about this in 2025. So now, as truck mix maxes out for a lot of manufacturers, the belief was, okay, so how do we continue to drive profitability without doing more volume or by doing less volume? And I think the answer was, well, electric vehicles, right? We can charge more, there's more margin in them, and it hasn't worked, right? So this is Ford, who is kind enough to break out their profitability by business unit and not geographically, which is still how everybody else does it. But you can see Ford Model E, which is all their electric vehicles, cumulative since 2022, $9.2 billion in EBIT losses since then. And I think this year is probably about the same, another $5 billion per year, with the internal combustion and the commercial divisions still making money, so offsetting those. I think, so let me get into this little bit of analysis. This is Tesla. I think what we get in 2025, obviously with Trump in office, he's talked about, we've heard rolling back the $7,500 federal tax credit. I think there has to be, you can't take away a demand lever without taking away the mandate for the manufacturer, right? You can't say, hey, consumer, we're going to take away a reason for you to buy these things, but then hold the manufacturer to the fuel economy emissions targets. Those things have to happen together. And the other thing is, and I was actually just out at the NADA annual board meeting. They asked me to present, and I showed them this little bit of analysis. I think if the powers that be in the government say to the legacy automakers, you should be doing EVs, which obviously that language has softened because Tesla makes so much money, right? Because that's been the pushback. Every manufacturer, Ford's losing money hand over fist, and you say, we can't do it. And the government says, you can do it because Tesla does it. So I did this little bit of research or analysis about Tesla. I deconstructed their profitability. So gross profit per vehicle, this is the third quarter 2024, $6,100 per vehicle. And what I told NADA was this, is that if you're going to go fight in Washington on this and the government tells you that it's the manufacturer's fault they can't be profitable on EVs, you tell them this, that even if Tesla's profitability is legit from an accounting perspective, even if it's sustainable for them, no other automaker can replicate it, right? So only Tesla can do these things, and not because they've figured out some new manufacturing technique. $6,000 per vehicle in gross. $3,200 is labor cost advantage per vehicle, and I'll show you that in just 1 minute. So that's $3,200 per vehicle. $1,600 are regulatory credits, which were $731 million in the third quarter. They were $981 million in the second quarter. So those are legit. That's part of doing business. That's a system that the government set up for them to be able to sell regulatory credits. They book them as revenue, but let's face it, they're 100% margin. There's no cost associated with those. So you might as well just put them, I put them here at the gross line, you could put them at the net line. So that's $1,600 per vehicle. The other thing they do is they book deferred revenue for their full self-driving software. The problem is full self-driving doesn't exist, so they have to put some of that revenue on the balance sheet, and then when they issue updates or over-the-air updates, they'll pull some revenue from the balance sheet into that period. So it's basically 100% revenue pulled from the balance sheet to the income statement, and that in the third quarter was $500. So if you look at it, this is the compensation. So I went through, there's the proxy for every publicly traded company. They do this thing where they compare the CEO compensation to the median employee. So they calculate a median employee total comp equal to the same way they calculate it for the executives. So this is per employee. So you can see Ford is the closest. It's about $84,000 General Motors is above 90, and then Lucid and Rivian are above 100,000 per each, 125 per each, 160, 170 in the case of Rivian. Tesla's 45. So when you look at, if Tesla was paying their average employee, which is something like 140,000 employees globally, and it's not because of China. Everybody says that, oh, there's a lot of China people. It's not. It's only 44% outside of the US. So if they were paying at what Ford pays their median employee, it would be $3,000 per vehicle out of gross, right, out of their cost of goods, or in their cost of goods. So while you can pay your people whatever you want to pay them, nobody else can pay $45,000 per year for the median employee. That can only go up. So my point is that all this may be legit and sustainable, but nobody else, the government can't point to that profitability and say, well, Ford, you should be able to do that. It won't happen, which makes me think that there will be aggressive rollbacks of the EV mandates, even of CAFE, the corporate average fuel economy standard. So when you take out all of that from Tesla, this is what gross profit per vehicle actually looks like. And those are only the three things that I took out. I mean, you know, we financial analysts talk about capitalizing expenses maybe in certain quarters that aren't audited. And so there's probably a lot going on there that isn't above board. But even taking out what is above board, they're not as profitable as the legacy automakers, right? So the government can't really point to them and hold them up as this benchmark of profitability on electrification. So the good news is that as we're expecting through the end of the decade increased capacity, production capacity of vehicles, the franchise base is actually consolidated, maybe a good outcome for bad reasons over the years, but when you look at the franchise base back from 2005 was over 40,000. We're about just over 30,000. And the good news there is that throughput, those are new vehicles annually, is actually still strong, right? You look at where it was before the bankruptcy period, which was in here, and it was lucky to be 400 units per franchise, and this is average across the country, and you can see we're 500. So while I believe that the manufacturers are going to go through a good amount of pain in right-sizing their capacity, and you'll certainly feel it, the franchise base is reasonably healthy in terms of throughput. But like I said, I think what will happen is that will be pain on the new vehicle side for the franchise base. And 2025, if not now, is the time to start to look at some of that revenue diversity in fixed ops, right? We know fixed ops new vehicle is the largest revenue contributor, but it's the smallest gross profit contributor. And it's the opposite with fixed ops, right? Low revenue, but huge. It's actually the largest gross profit contributor. So I think that the franchise base having that revenue flexibility, now is the time to start with some of these efficiencies in the service base, parts counters, whatever it is, to offset that decline in gross in your new vehicle mix. I believe that is it. That is it. So I will be happy to take questions. There's me. On any of this and anything else too. Yeah?
How do you explain the capacity increase when everybody realizes that they can't sell these?
Well, they're now realizing they can't sell these cars. Well, but they're all delusional. Well, but it was always right. You have your fixed costs. You have to cover them. So you're going to build enough, and then you're going to figure out how to sell them tomorrow by throwing money at it, right? General Motors, when they went bankrupt, they were selling 10 million cars a year, right? But they're not profitable vehicles. So not every sale is a good sale, and I think the pandemic period was very eye-opening for a lot of manufacturers, right? When supply and demand got 1-to-1, everybody in this room, every manufacturer, profitability went wild. It was unprecedented. And that, I think, woke a lot of groups up to understand that you need to keep supply and demand in balance. Think about before the bankruptcy period. You had the UAW had a jobs bank which meant whether you were on the line building a car or you were in the union hall playing cards, you got 95% of your money. So what did you do? You put that person on the line, you say, well, you're going to build a car and I'm going to generate cash flow, even if I have to sell it at a loss. Right? So after the bankruptcy period, Jobs Bank went away, debt was forgiven, the cost structure was rationalized, and then it just inflates, right? They just got 25% in the last contract.
That doesn't explain why they would want to increase capacity by 25% over the next 5 years. You'd think that would be a good reason to keep it level.
Yeah, but you have to show growth, right? A lot of these are publicly traded companies. You have to show growth. The franchise dealer base, right? You don't have to report to anybody. You can do the same profitability consistently. Consistent profitability for a publicly traded company doesn't work, right? That's why they get 4 times multiple, and Tesla gets 60 times multiple, because they're going to grow in robo whatevers and 20 million units a year. So the problem is that you think that you're going to have the demand to meet, and you always think you're going to gain market share, right? Every manufacturer tells you how much market share they're going to gain in a given year, but it doesn't matter if it's not profitable market share.
But nobody exaggerates that more than Tesla.
Oh yeah, but the market, yeah, it's a meme stock. That doesn't. My understanding is it's, and I just got a whole bunch of reports and documentation. They want me to take a look at that. I think for the most part, it's an exchange, right? Amazon isn't really selling anything. I think it's a lead generator at this point, right? It's what TrueCar was. It's the start. Getting your foot in the door, too. Yeah, I don't know. Look, my wife buys more stuff off Amazon than anybody. I don't think the next Hyundai Palisade is, showing up on my doorstep from Amazon. I think people, my initial reaction is it's cars.com, it's Auto Trader, it's another source of classifieds that feeds back to the dealer. There's no way you're going to replicate this franchise model at the margins that.
Well, just so you know, Jose Munoz, he's hell-bent on this.
Yeah.
And he's done a lot already. Things that people thought he couldn't do. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, look, I think it hinges on, my other initial reaction is it hinges on distribution, right? Because they're centralized inventory. The other thing, and we were just talking about it before lunch, the other thing is that Carvana and CarMax, to an extent, had to overpay or have to overpay for used vehicle inventory because they're not a full-line manufacturer or company. So when the used vehicle market is bad, they have no choice, right? For them, the only way out is through. So if they're going to get inventory, they're going to overpay for it. And I think that's not what's considered. What's considered is like, oh, they're killing it, right? But I think that the franchise base kind of looked at the idea of having revenue flexibility and being able to look at these other business units and say, why would I overpay for my used vehicle inventory when I can go make 13% gross on a new vehicle? Or I can make 60% gross in my service base. So I think you see the headline of Carvana killing it, but at the end of the day, they're no more profitable than when they were on the verge of bankruptcy. Yeah, but ADESA is about the reconditioning, right? And the other thing is, I was talking to Jim about this, right? So if Carvana owns ADESA, you think they're getting vehicles from Manheim, right? Or manufacturers are going to, they're competing. So is Toyota giving vehicles to ADESA, or are they only going to deal with Manheim, right? Because now because now Carvana is competing with Toyota. So, but those 54 or whatever, that was about them being able to take vehicles in, recondition them, and get them back on the market, right? I don't know that it was so much about the throughput of selling at retail. So it's definitely a thing, but I have faith and confidence in this franchise model. It's the way it is for 100+ years because it works. And I think we hear a lot of noise about direct or competition, and at the end of the day, it's classifieds. It's another form of distribution.
So I agree with you on the franchise model, and I know in New York State, we were very tough on Tesla and grandfathered them in, but it was the other Chinese brands and other people coming into the market. But if you look at the franchise system today, in my opinion, and I was just with one of the BYD board members last week, and we talked about, he was a little concerned with the tariffs, but I said to him, even if you have a 50% tariff today on these Chinese vehicles, with the technology that's coming in on these cars, and you price out that 50% tariff, it's still going to be better than what we have here in the US, And even if that tariff gets increased, it's one thing if they put the tariffs and they put that back to the consumers as a rebate to lower the price of domestic manufacturers' vehicles here. But what's going to end up happening eventually is they'll just open up plants, Chinese, manufacturing plants here in the U.S., just like Toyota and Volkswagen and everyone else did. So if you look at it going forward with this union increase, we will never be competitive, and the government's probably going to have to step back in and save them down the road like they did the first time, because that was General Motors' problem. They paid 80% of the wages if they laid the guy off. It was cheaper to build a car that they couldn't sell. We're going to get to that point again. So where do you see this going? Obviously with the new administration, there's some hope, but with Tesla on one side, everyone's trying to figure out where we're going to end up as a franchise. But if you look at franchises around the world globally, the properties, they have to be reinvented. The model isn't there. A lot of these franchises, dealerships around the country, around the world are going out of business because of the Chinese vehicles coming into their marketplace. So.
Yeah, look, the Chinese question is interesting to me because, first of all, look, $15,000 Chinese vehicles or nobody's making money at $15,000, $20,000, even the Chinese, right? Right, but what I'm saying is that you can price things wherever you want. Doesn't mean you're going to make money on them. It's just your government's appetite for subsidizing them. But what's interesting about the China question for me is that, right, that truck mix to 81%, average transaction price in the US over that period is up like 40% to $49,000. Nobody selling in the US wants the $15,000, $20,000 part of the market, right? They've actually run completely away from it. So there's no competition down there because everybody knows you can't make money there. Now you may have at the bottom of the market, the Hyundai, Kias, Toyotas. Even they're not making money there, but they're willing to say, we think that your dealership and your ownership experience will be positive enough that you'll come back and eventually you'll be in the profitable point of our portfolio. For GM, Ford, the Stellantis brands, if their profitable part of the portfolio is 50,000 plus, what they're saying is, well, I'd have to sell you a $20,000 unprofitable thing on the hope that you're going to come back in a couple years and buy a $28,000 unprofitable thing, and then come back and buy like a $35,000 unprofitable thing, and then a $45,000 unprofitable thing, so that someday I can get you into make money off of you. And we're just not willing to do that. So this is not, people ask me about like, well, why don't they just sell more affordable vehicles? And it's like, well, they can't, and it's a conscious decision, it's a business decision to not do that. So it's not incompetence of, oh, we can't. Every automaker has done that. Every automaker has moved up market to truck versus car. Transaction prices are near record high. Nobody wants that part of the market. So to me, what would be interesting is if if the government lets Chinese manufacturers in or to be able to sell here and says, hey, look, at $15,000, you have a 50% tariff. If you move up, we just 3x, 4x. So don't be thinking about $30,000, $40,000 vehicles here. So that maybe hurts the pre-owned market, which is undersupplied anyway because we haven't done any volume in it the last couple of years. There's been no leasing. So it's interesting that, like, I just kind of ask, well, what are we fighting against? We're fighting against Chinese manufacturers coming in at the bottom of the market and then taking over. I guess you could argue that that's what happened with Japanese manufacturers after World War II. But I don't know how you, especially if they're going to build factories here, how do you just have to flat out protectionism it and say no. But I feel like that would serve a need at the bottom of the market. I speak at state association events all over the country, and somebody will always stand up and say, hey, look, the average income in my county where my dealership is, for the household is $60,000. How are we supposed to be buying $50,000 vehicles new? And I say, you know what? The manufacturer doesn't care. I'm going to sell you something unprofitable, or I'm going to hold out and wait to sell you something profitably. So it's an interesting question, but I don't see how it stays out. And honestly, I don't see how it's directly competing with anybody, at least in the early stages at the bottom of the market. Certainly not at $20,000. So, and it was here last year, I think, Steve, right? We did an informal survey, like who would put their hand up for a BYD, and nobody raised their hand, right? Or a VinFast or whoever we asked about. Is that different now? Would dealers put their hand up for a Chinese franchise?
If you were offered a BYD franchise in the U.S., would you take it? Raise your hands?
That's what it was last year. It was one. You're the same guy.
I think you'd be crazy not to. If you can't fight them, you can join them, though.
That's right. Anything else? Anybody else?
Round of applause for Kevin.
Thanks, bud.
Now it's on. Okay. Thanks again to Kevin and to Steve for putting this group together. He always comes up with creative things for us to understand and twirl around in our heads. I'd like to ask Steve to come up for a minute. I have a thank you for you. Yeah. Thank you again, as always. And Michael, we'll bring them to you. We have some thank yous for Kevin, thank you as always. You're terrific. Always so informative. Okay, Marty, thank you so much. Just a little thank you. Some remembrance. McKenna, this is for you. Thank you again. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Jim, for you. Thank you. And I would also ask, just for a moment, to have Michael DeSilva come up again. Michael, come up. We have a little thank you for your work this year. For you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And folks, I can't thank you enough for being so patient, asking great questions. I hope we sped it up enough for you so you can get on your merry way. We also have, on the way out, we have goodie bags. And of course, if you're a stockholder, you get your dividend check. So please be patient out there, because they're going to, it's a process to get the checks in some order, and It's just a nightmare. But anyway, the girls have it under control, sort of, but just be somewhat patient. And again, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming as always, and have a safe home and a very nice holiday season. And please don't forget to take the centerpieces. And one last thing, and Jim will have to help me. Jim, you're going to have to help me with this. Time is running out if you're involved at all with CDK and Reynolds.
Yes, there are links on the NJ Car website, and we have sent out notices if we need. There are links on our website and in some of the notices that we've sent out around the CDK. You do not need to hire a third-party administrator. If you have, you're going to share whatever recovery you get with them, but there are links available that'll bring you right to the law firms that are handling and the administrators that are handling the settlement claims.
And the settlements, I understand, are pretty darn good, which is not always the case in class action. And also, time is running out. It's what time? December something?
I don't recall the date,
Yeah.
but it's fast approaching, yeah.
So please, if you haven't already done it, don't be afraid. Oh my God, a class action. What do I have to do? What paperwork? All you have to do is get on that link. Okay? Have a safe and a great holiday season.